All right. So today we will be actually going to amino acids. We started with amino acids yesterday, but let's again recap some of the stuff we talked about, the fatty acid synthesis. That way we compared, of course, yesterday fatty acid biosynthesis with fatty acid degradation, also known as beta oxidation. We've seen that. We compared basically many aspects of it. We really need to. We mentioned a very important transport mechanism because acetylcoenzyme A, although it's the carbon source for the fatty acid, but really it's not the one that's added two at a time. It's the malonide ACP, which ACP, of course, is the activated carbon for the fatty acid biosynthesis. All right, so we went through this transport system, which really introduced us to one new enzyme, the malic enzyme, which is a cytosolic enzyme that converts malate to pyruvate. Okay? So we have oxaloacetate. So the two carbon compound, the acetyl group, is carried by citrate, basically, and is transported to the cytoplasm, where citrate dye is converted back to oxaloacetate. And oxaloacetate, of course, is converted to malate. Malate through malic enzyme to pyruvate, and that gives us our second source of NADPH, of those inductive electron powers that we need also for the biosynthetic pathway. Of course, pyruvate goes in again. And we drew a parallel here to the gluconeogenesis, at least part of the gluconeogenesis, which is the utilization of oxaloacetate as a carbon skeleton for the building of glycolysis. This enzyme is heavily regulated, acetylcoenzyme carboxylase, and we mentioned it's regulated by two modes. One of them is covalent modification through protein kinase, and one of them allosteric control through citric acid. This step is basically exchanging hands between coenzyme A and ACP. Okay? The acetyl group and the malonyl group are exchanging here to give us the ACP derivatives of both those. That's it. So, this enzyme is very specific to malonyl because it only works on it. This enzyme is specific to acyl in general. It will be slower than acetyl. And so the question is, would this enzyme, acetylcoenzyme carboxylase, catalyze this reaction, or would it not catalyze this reaction? Let me just get rid of this. The answer is not false, it's true. The answer is true. Okay? The answer is true. This enzyme works on any acyl. Propionyl is an example of that. What about butyrate? Would it work with butyrate, coenzyme? Butyrate? It's acyl too. It's 4 carbons. Butyrate? It could work with butyrate. Much slower. Would it work with pentatyl? Yes. Alright, so it's not just acetyl. Basically, any acyl, and this is the idea here, any enzymes. All right, of course, we covered this. We talked about the two enzymes that change from coenzyme A to ACP, and of course, now, fatty acids are synthesized by adding 2 carbon units of acetyl ACP, acetylcoenzyme A, malonyl ACP, malonyl coenzyme A, or carnitine coenzyme A. Which one of the following is correct? suppose it's C. C is 2 carbon units per malonide ACP. Absolutely. Malonide ACP is our carbon source. Right? It has to be added through malonide because when you add it through malonide, what's going to happen? You will lose the carbon dioxide. And if you lose that carbon dioxide, you will make this reaction energetically possible. If you don't have that carbon dioxide and you add acetylcholine, you're not going to go much along the thing. Yes, ma'am?
Do you use acetyl ACP here? Acetyl ACP?
Acetyl ACP can be added, but really the fact that we have the malonide in order to decarboxylate will make it possible. So really the idea here is what energetically makes it favorable. We talked about fatty acid synthase, which somebody asked me whether it makes one molecule at a time, and the answer is yes, it makes one molecule at a time. And what that molecule it makes, fatty acid synthase, polymerase ACP, and it's released, of course, through that. And of course, what is the theme of this reaction? Is 3 reactions: reduction, dehydration, reduction, and that happened in the reductive subunit, which has the dehydratase, inoreductase, and ketoreductase. And of course, the ACP is the one that is handling those growth-destroying chain of fatty acid enzymes. We talked about metabolic integration, and we talked about the source of NADP for the synthesis of fatty acids, and that source is, of course, the glucose phosphate pathway and the malic enzyme. Okay, both of those contribute to the NADPH, and as you've seen, we need a lot of NADPH in order to make a fatty acid. We love electrons, not in this aliphatic chain that is full of single bonds, that is full of high energy electrons. Okay? That's for the elongation. Elongation. Thank you. Elongation is different from actually building the fatty acids. Okay? We haven't talked about elongation much, have we? We just mentioned that it happens in the particular. But yeah, there's other stuff that we're not going to talk about it beyond this stuff. The carboxylase enzyme, acetylcholine carboxylase, is inhibited by phosphorylation, and it's activated by citrate. And at that point, of course, we mentioned that citrate is a carbon indicator. And why or how is citrate a carbon indicator? That was the other thing we explained. Why or how? This is the big question. All right, let's see. That's right. That's right. It's all of the above. It's all of the above. It does all of the above. That's how it is. All right. Okay, we're going to go on to talk about amino acid metabolism. Now, amino acid metabolism, of course, is going to be 2 things: anabolism and catabolism, as usual. We talked specifically about the nitrogen part. Carbon skeleton, we have a very good handle on that, as we see. You know, excuse me. Citric acid cycle provide most of the carbon skeletons for a lot of stuff, right? And today, actually, we need to re-emphasize the importance of the citric acid cycle intermediates as a carbon skeleton donor. You know, because all the intermediates can go to different places other than just the citric acid cycle. So that's fine. The amino group is what we have problem. We really cannot do anything about it. As a matter of fact, most of the creatures on this planet cannot do much about it. It has to be fixed, just like the carbon dioxide. And we mentioned, of course, the rhymes of the ancient mariner, and we all were happy. We mentioned also that we contribute actually 25% to this fixation because of agricultural reasons. We can do that. And actually, it's a very expensive process. And we know that the UV light and the lightning can do the rest. And of course, that leaves actually the overwhelming majority, which is carried out by our friends in the soil, our microbial friends. And that's prokaryotes in general, archaea, and bacteria. All right, not all of them, by the way, as well. It's a very, very complicated process. This is the enzyme that does it, nitrogenase. Now, this enzyme actually utilize iron and molybdenum iron complexes, okay, in order to pass those electrons, to force those electrons on atmospheric nitrogen in order to make it into ammonia. It's a marvelous enzyme. It's actually one of the life-giving enzymes, for lack of a better word, of course. And the bacteria that harbors it actually can utilize the nitrogen from the atmosphere and fix it into something. What does fixing mean, by the way? What do we mean by fixing carbon dioxide or fixing that? That means putting it on a chemical that's soluble inside the cell, forcing it there, right, to where it's tangible, so we can utilize it in other reactions. Okay, fixing it on something. And so this one fixes it. I'm going to talk about the fixation. We talked about this reaction that being highly unfavorable. Well, it's favorable, but it needs high activation energy. Okay, and enzymes are good in reducing that, and that's what basically nitrogenase do. Of course, it does it with a lot of electrons and a lot of ATP. So this enzyme will produce ammonia, NH3. Okay, that's what happened when you fix the atmospheric nitrogen. You will make ammonia, and that ammonia now needs to be put somewhere safe. And that is the first reaction. The enzyme is glutamate dehydrogenase. We know everything except glutamate dehydrogenase. We haven't seen it before. But it's alpha-ketoglutarate converted to glutamate. And the process, a nitrogen or ammonia in this case, is actually fixed on it and it's placed right here on the alpha-ketoglutarate. Okay? So alpha-keto acid got this amino group. And what else do we need? We need an ADPH, right? Producing power. Okay? For the bacteria, who can provide this? The plant can provide it through their, of course, photosynthesis. And then the second reaction is glutamine synthase, and happens through this intermediate. You don't have to worry about this intermediate, but basically you can go from glutamate to glutamine. Okay, now glutamine, as you remember from the 20 amino acids that we memorized, it has two amino groups. One in the R chain, of course, plus the alpha amino. So now we have two moles of ammonia fixed into something very familiar to all of us. Okay? I'm sure at this point now we can navigate ourselves through that metabolic maze that we have so far. We will go through that. Okay? Okay, but wait a second. Wait a second. This reaction here. What the heck is wrong with this reaction? Is this a transamination reaction? What do you think? Is this a transamination reaction? Have we seen such reaction before? Have we? B, what is B? No, this is not a transamination reaction. That's right, this is not a transamination reaction. All right? So the question is, why not? Why is this not a transamination reaction? All right. What are people saying? People are saying all of the above. That's right. There's no second amino acid and there's no second. That's a transamination. That's how we define transamination. We define it where? Remember where we define it? In aspartate malate chart, right? That's where we define it. So what kind of reaction is this? This is an amination reaction, right? It's also a reductive process because it needs an ADPH. But it's a process that doesn't need a second amino acid because the donor, in this case, is the amino group itself that came fixed from this bacteria. Okay? So that's the donor. So that's the amination step. Equally important, this reaction can be reversible, is the deamination process. Okay? The deamination process. So we can aminate and we can deaminate without the need of a second amino acid, an amino donor through an amino acid. And this is why we can fix methane, not us. This is why here in this planet, this is how we fix methane. So the very important difference between transamination and the amination process. All right, so now let's talk about diet again. Because just like carbohydrates and lipids, we eat protein. Actually, it's part of very important part of our diet. I think that's one of the sources of our protein, is through diet. Okay? So we have to digest it, just like everything else. Now, carbohydrates, digestion start with the saliva in the mouth. Proteins, however, start in the stomach, where the pH is extremely low, pH 2. And pepsin is one of the major proteases, protein that destroy the peptide bonds. Have we seen other peptides, by the way, in this course? Have we? Chemotrypsin, trypsin, right? Carboxypeptidase, those are all stuff that we talk about. Those are part of the arsenals that the body can use in order to break those peptide bonds. And so just like what happened in the carbohydrates, we end up having, of course, single amino acids, oligopeptides, and all those, of course, are internalized by the intestinal mucosa and goes in. Eventually, we have 3 amino acids. Okay? There's no problem transporting the 3 amino acids. So this is a source of amino acids. Now, because of that, actually, it turned out that we can make some of those amino acids. See this here, this column, the non-essential column? This is what we can make. We have the metabolic capability to do it. We have the enzymes to do all those. We can build those. Yeah? Of course, again, the good news for us is we do not have to memorize those pathways. Okay? We just need to know that we can make it, and we just going to need to know what source are they coming from. Okay? Those essential, we cannot make. We need to know that essential amino acids that we cannot make. That we necessarily have to have in our diet. We must have in our diet, because we cannot make them. It's very easy to memorize, by the way, those amino acids. Because if you look here, all right, what are those amino acids in yellow? What's in common between those? Those are all hydrophobic amino acids. So most of the hydrophobic amino acids we cannot make, right? What about those two? Histidine and lysine. Those are basic amino acids. We can make only one basic amino acid, that's arginine. But we cannot make histidine and lysine. Of course, methionine, threonine, SH and OH, we won't need them. You cannot make them. All right. As a matter of fact, here the slide is just to show you that the essential amino acids, the one that we cannot make, involve several pathway steps, several reactions. And so the red ones are the essential. You can see here on the x-axis the number of pathway steps, how many enzymes are involved in it. We can see most of the essential, most of them, right, the red ones, needs actually more than 5 enzymes that we do not have. All right? While those here, the essentials, those really 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 steps on those enzymes we have. So essential, maybe part of the reason they're essential because we don't have this big capability of having all these enzymes coded in our genome. All right, we cannot have it. All right, so this is why we're essential. Those 3 amino acids, we definitely know. We have to. Okay? We already know. Not we have to, we already know them from that transamination. What other sources of amino acids do we have? Recycling. Recycling is a very important thing in our body. You see that. We don't waste carbon, we don't waste carbon at all. As a matter of fact, proteins have to be recycled. And proteins, when they're synthesized, when they're translated to enzymes and structured proteins and whatnot, those cannot stay forever. We have to recycle them. They have a time limit, they have expiration date, and then they have to be broken down to amino acids and reutilized. All right? So we have basically 3 reasons, technically 2. One of them, the half-time that is destined for this protein. Okay? And this is, by the way, dictated by something they call degron, D-E-G-R-O-N, degrons. Degron are basically sequences, amino acid sequences within the protein that somehow writes the destiny of that protein, how much time this protein has. Now this table here you do not need to memorize at all. Okay? Basically this table says, among the things we have discovered about degrons, which give the timeline for the protein, is that we were able to see a correlation, observe a correlation between between amino acid residues in the protein and the time that protein can spend doing its business. So if we have those amino acids, and again, you do not need to memorize this, usually the proteins that harbor those amino acids on their N terminal, usually can survive for up to 20 hours, even more. Okay? The ones that have those amino acids, we've seen that they are anywhere between 2 minutes to 30 minutes. And then those that force from 3 to 30 minutes. Just an observation, but obviously statistically valid. So there are other stuff, and those collectively are big ones, called big ones. Okay? So a protein comes with an expiration date tag on it. And the body knows that. The cell knows that. The machinery of the cell knows that. The other way we can recycle proteins is if the proteins have problems. Yeah? They malfunction from the beginning. Just like in the factory, if we get them out malfunction, you have to return them. Okay? Now the cause of that malfunction can be one of two things. Either they're damaged afterwards, like let's say free radicals destroy them, all right, and that body, the cell, can recognize those are damaged proteins. They misfold. Okay, it's misfolding really what it is. And the other thing is we have a problem because of translational error. Some mutation in the code that causes a different amino acid, like say hemoglobin, and that actually causes us to have problems or fragments. Okay? So any damage that causes the protein to misfold. And as we've seen from this course and other courses, misfolded protein means loss of function. Loss of function means this protein is useless as this. But it has a lot of amino acids. What to do with it? Let's degrade it. Let's degrade it and use those amino acids. Can we degrade all of them? Unfortunately not. Like an example of something that we can degrade, prions, the one that causes eventually Alzheimer's, right? So we cannot unfortunately degrade all of protein. It would be very nice if we can do that. As a matter of fact, that's a subject for our research in order to try to get rid of those proteins. All right. So this is how we get it. All right. So what does the cell do in order to identify those proteins? Well, if it's misfolded, and somehow they can identify that, they usually tag it with a peptide called ubiquitin. That's different from the quinone, ubiquitin. It's called ubiquitin because it's a very ubiquitous in the cell as well, this protein. It's a small protein. All we need to know about it, it's called ubiquitin, and usually it's tagged to that protein by covalent bonds. And any protein that is walking around with ubiquitin with it, it's really going to be doomed. It's really going to be destroyed into amino acids. Okay? Ubiquitin. We have 3 enzymes, and really the reason I want to mention those 3 enzymes, specifically enzyme 3, that tag the proteins with ubiquitin, because they have a very important clinical correlations. Those enzymes are the ones basically collectively what they do. They are responsible for identifying a misfolded protein, taking the ubiquitin, and adding it to those. That's what they do. Enzyme 3 in particular is of interest, ubiquitin protein ligase. That's basically take the ubiquitin and whatever protein that is not functioning anymore and make this covalent bonds. There are 2 problems that can happen with this enzyme, enzyme 3, ubiquitin protein ligase. Ligase, remember things that are put together. It can be not active or hyperactive. And if we have, God forbid, either one of those varieties, we're screwed. If it's defective, it's not working, that means we are not recycling proteins. That means we are accumulating those non-functional proteins. One of the neurological disorders is Parkinson's. Okay, so that's a genetic disorder. If it's hyperactive, that means the proteins are not even having a chance to do their job, and they're recycled prematurely, even though they're functional. Okay? And in this case, part of the proteins that are destroyed for no particular reason before they do the function are the DNA repair proteins. We haven't talked about that. There's an excellent course, of course, called molecular biology. I hope if you haven't taken it, you will take it. But DNA is continuously maintained by those DNA repair proteins. Because protein DNA is always damaged, from different environmental factors. And those proteins are almost 100% repairing all the time. Now, if those proteins are recycled all the time, that damage to the DNA will go unnoticed. And the result, of course, can be different kinds of cancer depending on what genes have been affected. So hyperactivity can cause cancer, some sort of cancer, and hypoactivity or defectiveness to that can cause diseases like Parkinson's. Make sense? So recycling protein is very important, but recycling them in the proper way is very. Where?
Under nitrogen.
Here?
Hydrolyzes.
Hydrolyzes ubiquitin from the dual protein.
So
basically, it just breaks that peptide bond between the protein and the ubiquitin. Ubiquitin is the bond is hydrolyzed. That's what happens. Okay. So if it's typo, then yes, it's a typo. Ubiquitin is stripped. The bond between the ubiquitin and the protein is hydrolyzed. Okay. So ubiquitin can be recycled back. This picture will explain what I said there. So that's the protein going through here. See, ubiquitin is released again. It will go to other protein, and then those protein fragments will go to the grinder, and that will give us the amino acids. That make sense? Okay, that makes sense. So now we have amino acids. Of course, again, that will go to different things. Now, what are we going to do with amino acids is the subject of today's lecture. Okay. Depending, of course, again, it always depends on what the cells need. So we can take those amino acids, tag them to transfer RNA, and go through translation. That will give us what? That will give us protein. Okay, so we can do the translation process. Or we can take the amino group, strip the amino group, and use the carbon skeleton in order to build stuff, other stuff. Okay? So we can make amino acids, we can make proteins, or we can make other molecules. Okay? So the amino group, the nitrogen, that will go through urea cycle if we really don't need it. Urea cycle, of course, go eventually out and as a urine. Okay? That's it. Urea cycle is extremely important. And that is, by the way, the last cycle we need to know in detail. Now, the carbon skeleton, after we strip away the amino group, now that can be utilized to build many things, including glucose, by the way, including glucose through gluconeogenesis. Remember, that's why we named it gluconeogenesis, because it doesn't use carbohydrate material, but this is part of the material. Because we'll see today, and we've seen that before, that carbon skeleton from amino acids actually end up easily, for the majority of the time, inside that citric acid cycle, that central metabolic pathway that we talked about. And that's why citric acid cycle is a hub. It's a major hub. Even amino acids end up there. Even the carbon skeleton of the amino acid end up there. Okay? Any questions so far conceptually about this topic? Before we delve in the actual pathways? No pathways, okay. Just, the stuff for them. Alright. Alrighty. Here is the glucose, the glycogen, the fatty acid synthesis, all that mostly given protein. That's what we need for our protein. Alright, so let's talk about the three amino acids that we already know how they synthesize. That's, of course, glutamate, aspartate, and alanine, and the process is called transamination, right? Transamination. So we know that. And of course, what's the direct link? Is alpha-ketoglutarate, oxaloacetate, and pyruvate. And those two, of course, are part of the citric acid cycle. This, of course, can be converted to oxaloacetate, like carboxylate, or to acetylcoenzyme like pyruvate and protease complex. So it will end up in citric acid cycle as well. So there, that's three of the carbon skeletons we already know. And we know directly through their enzymes. All right. Now here are the 20 amino acids. And I promise you there is no need to memorize pathways. You just need to know where they come to us from. Okay, the biosynthetic stream. Oxaloacetate gives us aspartic acid, we know that. But then aspartic acid, through a convoluted pathway, can give us any of those amino acids. Pyruvic acid gives us directly alanine. We already know that, transamination. But then it also can give us through multiple reaction pathway, valine and leucine. Alpha-ketoglutarate transaminates to glutamic acid. Glutamic acid actually can, by itself, use as power skeleton to give us glutamine proline, and arginine. What's the enzyme between glutamine and glutamic acid? What is it called? We've just seen it. Needs ATP. What is it? Did somebody say glutamine synthase? Somebody said glutamine synthase, right? Yes, glutamine synthase. Part of that actually fixing and increasing process in bacteria. 3-phosphoglycerate. We've seen 3-phosphoglycerate, right? That actually can give us serine, and then serine can give us cysteine glycine. Ribose 5-phosphate here. I mean, now things are looking interesting, right? I can see interest in your face, specifically your face. It's very interesting. Ribose 5-phosphate. Where did we get ribose 5-phosphate before? Pentose phosphate pathway. Well, that gives us a carbon skeleton directly for histidine. Histidine is very special, actually. And we cannot make it, by the way. All right. Now, what is this? It's phosphoenolpyruvate, isn't it? And erythroid 4-phosphate. My goodness, everything is familiar. You look at it, is it familiar? Have you seen those? Phosphoenolpyruvate, where did you see those? Phosphoenolpyruvate in glycolysis, gluconeogenesis. What about erythroid? Which one? Carbon cycle, what? Yes, transcarbonation, transalkylation, all that stuff. So we know how to get those, but don't worry, we just need to know that they actually are a source for those amino acids. All right? Do a review here. Which pathway provides the carbon skeleton for those amino acids? Which one of those? That's it. I just want to show you how really we're not learning much new stuff anymore. We're just having good time. Can't say that looks great. So we have a B, which is of course a PCH cycle. Somebody suggested A and D. A and D, and that's glycolysis and gluconeogenesis. I mean, technically, because we have a little, kind of link everything together, but don't take advantage of this fact by answering questions this way. No, this is directly, obviously, from oxaloacetate pathway. Those are directly involved in the citric acid cycle, right? Okay. Now, is there a link to glycolysis and gluconeogenesis? Yes, ultimately there is a link to the carbon dioxide that we just exhaled. So yes, there is something. Okay. What about this? What about this? Pyruvate, 3-phosphoglycerate, ribose. What pathways are those? What very known pathways are those? All right. What do we have here? Aha. What is the last one? What is the last one? Both A and C. That's right. That's both glycolysis and pentose phosphate pathway. That is absolutely correct. Good. Good. You see that there's nothing new here? You see that? The only thing that's new really now just linking those names together, where they come from. Now, what pathways are involved here? Again, it's not anything. Now, if you're very interested in those pathways, and I'm not being sarcastic, there's actually the advanced biochemistry course that goes through these stuff. And so, all right, that's enough of this. All right, so this is amino acid synthesis. We've seen how we get it from food. We've seen actually how we can recycle it within our metabolic capabilities. Some of that is our metabolic capabilities. Some of that are not. We cannot make histidine, remember, and some other amino acids. But we've seen how they all link within the context of citric acid cycle. As a matter of fact, citric acid cycle is something that, trust me, you need to know for the rest of your life. Because everything ends there and everything begins there, as far as intermediary, central intermediary metabolism. Degradation, same thing. We're not going to go through degradative pathways. There's a lot of them. But as, logically, you definitely probably are thinking right now, logically, if they come from citric acid cycle, probably they end up to citric acid cycle too. And you would be right. Absolutely very right. Just like they go from there, they end up. ashes to ashes, citric acid cycle to citric acid cycle. Really, that's a theme in those central metabolic pathways. Now, the thing that we need to worry about is the amino group. Again, that nitrogen. We always have to get rid of that nitrogen. We have to strip that nitrogen before you use that carbon skeleton. Remember, carbon skeleton is very expensive. It has already high energy electrons, so we need to recycle it if we need it, right? So, again, we have to get rid of nitrogen. So that is the one trick that we need to be aware of. What happens to the nitrogen? Now, we already know the type of reaction that gets rid of the nitrogen. We talked about transamination, right? And we talked about deamination, which is removal of the nitrogen. Okay? So basically the theme, usually, that's the general theme right here. It's any amino acid that's destined to, that its carbon skeleton is destined to be used for something, can transaminate at the very least with a keto acid. This is the transamination reaction. And it will give us the conjugate keto acid, and then that other amino acid will be there. Well, we really didn't strip it, right? It went to another amino acid. Well, it turned out that we have chosen amino acids that carry those nitrogen in the bloodstream to be finally deaminated. Okay? Just like we have always chosen molecules that carry units, we have chosen amino acids that carry those amino groups. Those are usually two amino acids, alanine and glutamine. Alanine is definitely one of them. As a matter of fact, we have a cycle named after alanine. Okay, let's say Lily. But basically, you transaminate, so the alpha amino group from this amino acid ends up at glutamate. Glutamate can go through blood, eventually end up at the liver, kidney, and then it can deaminate. It is deamination. That enzyme we just seen in the nitrogen fixation, right? You're going to get blood fixation. And that will give us what? Ammonia. Ammonia, is that a toxic material? Can we drink it like we're happy? No, we can't. We cannot. It's very bad. It's very poisonous. This is why we have the urea cycle. It's a very efficient cycle that actually immediately conjugated through 5 reactions that we will be knowing tomorrow. We'll talk about those 5 reactions, or last 5 reactions. That will give us urea. Urea is a compound that is much less toxic. Doesn't mean you can drink it, but it's much less toxic. Okay? Actually, we can have a lot of ammonia. That is part of the urine that we get to do. That will basically detoxify or decrease the toxicity of ammonia by linking it to urea. Okay? That we'll talk about tomorrow, not today. But this is basically the process, and this is called urea cycle. Okay? Everybody has to recycle their nitrogen somehow because it's toxic. Actually, that's very interesting. We'll talk about it. All right. This is the cycle I talked about. Alanine glucose cycle. Alanine is another chosen amino acid that carries the amino group from all the other amino acids through the bloodstream. And here's the cycle. You know the cycle. You are very familiar with the cycle. Just like Lego, we're going to arrange it in the cycle. Let's see. Okay, glucose. Glucose gives us pyruvate. Okay? Pyruvate, what is the link between pyruvate and alanine again? Pyruvic acid and alanine? Transamination, right? So basically pyruvate can transaminate to alanine. So amino acids, branch chain amino acids, will give their ammonia to pyruvate to make alanine. We can have more alanine, but a lot of alanine from all those amino acids in the muscles or in other tissues that will give you those amino groups to alanine. So now the alanine will go through the bloodstream, will go all the way to where? To the liver, our chemical factory. And there it can get transaminated to glutamate, so that becomes pyruvate again. And the glutamate can, of course, give us the nitrogen to the cycle, but pyruvate can go to glucose through gluconeogenesis, right? Proteoacetate, pyruvate. And then the nitrogen from glutamate is deaminated, and that, of course, goes through the urea cycle, which is the subject for tomorrow's lecture. And glucose, of course, then can go there. What's the other cycle we talked about that linked glucose to something else? Cori cycle, linked glucose to what? Lactate. So there are actually many cycles. The body doesn't recognize the cycle, of course. We kind of follow the radioactively labeled molecules in model animal proceedings that they end up actually from amino acids all the way back to glucose. That tells you the carbon skeleton is recycled. Okay? This is very important. Again, because carbon skeleton is passive, has a lot of electrons in it, high energy electrons. So we can utilize, recycle some of those. All right. This is the theme. This is where amino acids end up on the citric acid cycle. Okay? Now notice here that some amino acids, actually, because they're big, they break into two different carbon skeletons. So they can end up feeding two intermediates, ultimately, in the citric acid cycle. So this is, of course, the citric acid cycle. You can see here, like alanine, cysteine, glycine, serine, they end up in pyruvate. And, of course, all of those processes, somewhere in those processes, there is a transamination happening. Okay, because we're going to end up as a keto acid somewhere in the citric acid cycle. But look at those yellow ones. Those are ketogenic amino acids. Why do we call them ketogenic amino acids? Because they are giving us two molecules, either acetylcoenzyme A and or acetoacetylcoenzyme A. We have seen, of course, acetylcoenzyme A. And we've seen what we can do with acetylcoenzyme A. What can we do with acetylcoenzyme A? Other than citric acid cycle. What can we build with acetylcoenzyme A? Fatty acids. That's what ketogenic, they make fatty acids. So we can direct amino acids to build fatty acids. And hydrophobic, as you would expect, amino acids are mostly ketogenic. They'll provide those carbon skeletons. Acetoacetyl is another actually molecule that we'll see maybe the day after tomorrow. It's a very important intermediate that goes for the ketone bodies. But basically that's the field. That's all. This is all the 20 amino acids. No reactions really that we're going to talk about. Well, there's actually one thing I have to mention. But I'm mentioning it because it has clinical importance. Okay? And that's the amino acid phenylalanine. And I really want to attract your attention to the first reaction. This is the degradation of this amino acid. I really don't care if you know all this. Absolutely. I'm not going to ask you about this. However, the first enzyme I would like you to know about. What is the first enzyme called? Amino phenylalanine hydroxylase. It adds a hydroxyl group to phenylalanine. That makes it a tyrosine. Remember the structure? It turned out that this, by the way, this is the rest of the pattern. Okay, you don't have to worry about it. But it turned out that if you're lacking this enzyme genetically, what are the problems? Very, very famous disease. Phenylketonuria, PKU. PKU. Because if phenylalanine is not hydroxylated tyrosine and then went through this entire degradation pathway, it's going to go through another pathway. It's going to be transaminated. And the transamination of anything will give us a keto acid. And that keto acid is called phenylketone. Okay? And that phenylketone will end up in the urine. And will end up in any other places as well. Now this disease is actually one of the things they screen for when people are born. Okay? Even though the infant might not have this enzyme, but as long as the infant is in the womb, it's protected because the mother is pregnant for it. But once it's out, there's no more protection. It's very easily avoidable by having a very strict diet. And we can, thank God, we can actually, with the technology nowadays, have food that doesn't have phenyl. As a matter of fact, you can see a lot of warnings in diet products and stuff for PKU. Okay, so it transaminates. Now, if it's not detected, then it can cause neurological damage, brain damage. And irreversible brain damage, as a matter of fact. It's not reversible. So it's very important to detect it. That's why it's an essential part of detecting it in infants. Okay, they do this test immediately, as a matter of fact. All right, so that's the only enzyme that really, I thought that clinical correlation is very interesting. All right, we can synthesize glucose from aspartic acid. Is that true or false? Can we synthesize glucose from aspartic acid? Then transamination. So the answer is what? Yes or no? True. Yes, we can. Absolutely. How? Oxaloacetate. Oxaloacetate goes to what? PEP. Phosphoenolpyruvate. Right? The enzyme is carboxykinase. Phosphoenolpyruvate then can go up the gluconeogenic pathway until it reaches the other two reversible steps. Okay? So aspartic acid can make glucose for us. Fantastic. We can synthesize glucose from leucine and lysine, can we? Those are the ones that give us, hint, acetylcoenzyme A. Those that give us acetylcoenzyme A. If they give us only acetylcoenzyme A, let's have this happen. If those two give us only acetylcoenzyme A, can we make glucose? Can we? Like you and me, humans, can we make glucose? That turned out to be one of the questions I throw away, by the way. I think we have all the hints we need. Can we or can we not? Acetyl. Can we make glucose from acetyl group? That's the same answer distribution I found in the exam, by the way. We cannot make glucose from acetylcoenzyme A. You know why? Because we don't have what? We don't have a cycle. What's that cycle? Glyoxylate, which is epitomized by the enzyme that's called isocitrate ligase, right? So the only pathway that can make glucose from acetyl group is glyoxylate cycle. That's it. We don't have it. We like it. So I'll see everybody at around 1:32 o'clock. All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you. Thank you.